Excellencies, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mutsumi Malechani. I'm from the Adaptation Division of the UNFCCC Secretariat. I'm honored to facilitate the closure of the African Climate Week. The African Climate Week provided an opportunity to catalyze critical climate action work at the national and regional levels, particularly in light of the current and future economic recovery plans derived from the COVID-19 pandemic. With over 3,000 registered participants, the ACW provided an opportunity for regional stakeholders to have their voices heard in the United Nations climate change process and to contribute to the road to COP26 by showcasing action and the momentum being built in the region. As we have heard from the opening, we are in a race against time, and the ACW is an opportunity to foster collaboration on the pressing challenges we are facing and for building resilience against growing climate risks in the region. Getting the recovery right is an opportunity to grow faster, better, and greener, and bring us closer to a greener and more inclusive future for all Africa. Africa is particularly vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. There are a number of solutions that we also had throughout the sessions for low carbon climate resilient development. And also we have heard that enhanced support is crucial for delivering the required transformation, as well as a lot of the statements and progress towards in that direction. Over the past 3 days, we had fruitful discussions around 3 tracks. Track 1 on national action and economy-wide approaches, track 2 on integrated approaches for climate resilient development, and track 3 on transformative opportunities. And of course, importantly, we also had a set of capacity building sessions by the COP26 incoming COP presidency, the UK, on adaptation, finance, carbon markets, transparency, and reporting. Having been in climate change for a very long time, I must admit that our conversations around climate change are getting deeper and richer. And I think this is an encouraging aspect that we should embrace as we move along. Joining this closing panel today, I'm delighted to introduce to you Ms. Janet Ramirez, the environment specialist from the World Bank Group, who will deliver remarks on track 1. Dr. Charles Nyandiga, the regional technical team lead from the UNDP Nature, Climate and Energy, who will also deliver remarks or highlights from track 2. Dr. Richard Munang from the UNEP, who will also deliver remarks on track 3. And also we have Mr. Hugh Davis, who will also share with us highlights from the COP26 incoming presidency catalytic events that I just mentioned. And of course, most importantly, at the end, we will hear from Her Excellency Beatrice Anywa, the Minister of State of Environment of the Government of Uganda. Without further ado, I will go straight ahead to our speakers to give to us the highlights of what happened. So I start first with the highlights from Ms. Janet Ramirez from the World Bank to give us highlights from track 1. And as I did indicate, track 1 is on national action and economy-wide approaches. The track itself, it discussed ambitious action in key sectors and how these actions are being and can further be integrated in national planning and economic packages to enable COVID-19 recovery and support the Paris Agreement. Ms. Ramirez has prepared messages in this regard, and the technical team will play her video. Thank you.
Good morning to everyone. On behalf of the World Bank Group and our partner organizations, the UNFCCC Secretariat, UNEP, and UNDP, I thank all of you for participating in the 2021 Africa Climate Week. I would also like to thank our gracious host, the government of Uganda, and all of our speakers and moderators who contributed their knowledge and experiences and provided a space for all of us to learn from each other. The World Bank led on the delivery of track 1 of Africa Climate Week, which focuses on national accounts and economy-wide approaches. Regional and national experts shared ambitions and explored recommendations building climate resilience, climate finance, and how we crowd in the private sector. Throughout this week, we heard that an economy-wide approach is needed to address the climate challenges. This includes recognizing the limitations of national resources and the limited public fiscal space with competing development priorities to effectively work out efficient systems to mobilize new finance streams through carbon pricing mechanisms, sustainable finance through capital markets, and crowding in private finance. Climate resilience, recovery from COVID, and Africa's development model are inextricably linked. Existing strategic visions for the continent should encourage the implementation of actions toward Africa's goals through strong partnerships that leverage the multilateral platform. Without tackling gender inequalities, COVID recovery and green transition will be unequal. For a socially fair and just transition, we need to ensure that we are aligned on the principles for just transition, strategy, financing, and market instruments. And just transition is more than just the energy, as it will affect all sectors, jobs, and economies. The need for regional collaboration was heard repeatedly. Having reliable data on climate change is crucial to develop sustainable long-term strategies. Carbon pricing is considered a key tool to deliver cost-efficient emission reductions. However, how governments use carbon tax revenue will play a key role in getting buy-in from communities and investors. Nature-based solutions are regarded as a multifunctional tool that can address both climate change mitigation and adaptation challenges in an integrated manner, as well as supporting social economic development. As our Vice President said in his opening remarks, Africa's focus must be squarely focused on building resilience while pursuing low carbon development that avoids locking in carbon intensive practices and technologies. The World Bank Group's new climate change action plan, which complements the Africa Climate Business Plan, commits that over the next 5 years, 35% of World Bank financing will directly contribute to climate action. As the World Bank, we know Africa can be a global powerhouse of the future. We are grateful for the collaboration with our partners and all the regional and national organizations to make this week a reality. Now the hard part begins as we move into high gear to continue our work to address climate change and achieve our joint aspirations for a sustainable, low carbon and climate resilient future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me convey our appreciation to Ms. Ramirez for her messages. Clearly, economy-wide approaches are needed to address climate change. Climate, COVID, and sustainable development obviously are linked, and I think increasingly we recognize that. And inclusivity strategies, financing, carbon pricing, and a lot of other solutions are starting to emerge and are being tested in the region. Thank you very much for the message. I now move to our second speaker, Dr. Charles Nyandiga. As I indicated, is the regional technical lead from UNDP for Africa. Dr. Nyandiga will give us highlights from track 2 on integrated approaches for climate resilient development, which looked at how both climate risk and climate solutions are reshaping sustainable development in different sectors in the region. Dr. Nyandiga, you have this platform.
Thank you very much, moderator. Your Excellency, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, I want to start by thanking the government of Uganda for hosting this important week on climate. For track 2 on integrated approaches for climate resilient development, there were 3 key takeaways, which I would like to essentially summarize a little bit. First, there is a strong link between national adaptation plans, or the NAPs, and the nationally determined contributions, or the NDCs, and this instrument must be aligned. The NAPs can serve as a building blocks for the NDCs, and many countries are reporting that their NDCs that they will use their NAP for their adaptation component. This is particularly prominent in the LDCs, NDCs, and this is also clear from UNDP's climate promise, the world's largest offer of support for the NDC enhancement, where, of course, out of these, the 62 climate promise countries that have submitted new or updated NDCs, 95% of them have increased the adaptation ambitions. Countries emphasize the need to support the design of gender-sensitive implementation strategies in the NAPs that align directly with the Green Climate Fund pipelines and other sources of financing, with the caveat that success to GCF funds should be less bureaucratic. They also highlighted the importance of science-based policy and decision-making to attract investments in adaptation and the disparity between mitigation and adaptation financing in Africa, where current financing is focused on mitigation. The second takeaway from track 2 was on quantifying climate risks and addressing risks comprehensively is an important thing to take forward. To address climate risk comprehensively, participants recognized that multiple actions are required. Inclusive and participatory approaches involving different agents of change, such as women, the youth, the indigenous people, are key to successful risk management. We also need to avoid silos and build more holistic and comprehensive approaches to understanding and managing risks. This requires bringing together humanitarian, climate and development communities to work together, and embedding climate resilience in long-term development plans, policies, and frameworks. We also heard that strengthened data and information systems are necessary for the formulations of evidence-based policies and plans that attract climate adaptation investments and tracking and reporting of progress of adaptation actions. The third key takeaway was on partnership, including the private sector and the meaningful participation of indigenous peoples, youth, women, and other marginalized and vulnerable groups is found to be critical in climate resilience planning and implementation. For example, it was emphasized that traditional indigenous knowledge should be documented so that already existing survival mechanisms and ecosystem-based solutions of indigenous peoples are mainstreamed and maintained, utilized, integrated in adaptation efforts. Strategic regional collaboration and partnership are also needed to address current and anticipated risks head-on. For example, to safeguard and manage transboundary river basins, data sharing, capacity building, response efforts are just examples of collaboration. National plans such as NAPs and NDCs can be used as effective tools to this end. With these important takeaways, we would like to thank all esteemed speakers and moderators and all session leads and contributors for their great support under track 2, and of course, we and regional partners for the strong collaboration. Special thanks to the UNFCCC Secretariat for their excellent support in providing this platform for all the actors involved in climate action to come together to share solutions for the region. We look forward to keeping the momentum going on the road to Glasgow and for these important discussions to be taken forward. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nyandiga, and I can relate with the key messages that we just communicated now. The issue of the interlinkages between the different instruments, and not only the instruments on climate action, but also with other thematic areas, including on biodiversity, on land degradation, on other issues, including on the development. Thank you very much. And also the issue of comprehensively addressing climate risk. I think these are very important aspects, and thank you for the messages. I now have the pleasure to invite Dr. Richard Munang, from UNEP, who is going to share with us highlights from the track 3 on transformative opportunities. This track discussed ways to explore breakthrough solutions to deliver climate action at a scale that puts Africa on a low emission and highly resilient development pathway, with a focus on key sectors of the economy that need deep transformations. Dr. Munang, you have the platform.
Honorable Minister, representatives of the government of Uganda, all partners, all protocols observed. It is said that guests bring good luck. This time around, we as guests have been fortunate to be hosted for deliberations in one of the main subjects of our time, climate change. This Africa Climate Week has emphasized the urgency to escalate climate ambition as we build crucial momentum for COP26. We take this opportunity to say a big thank you to the government of Uganda for taking the initiative to launch us forward. We salute the efforts of all partners. UNEP is proud to have contributed to this conference. UNEP led track 3, which focused on seizing transformation opportunities to deliver climate action, focusing on critical sectors of the economy. On the first day, deliberations focused on urban environment. During this session, it emerged clearly that African cities have the fastest urbanization rate globally and are projected to host 800 million people by 2050. This future growth coupled with the need to resolve the ongoing informal development call for concrete interventions on policy and finance. For example, mandatory building energy codes and standards were recommended to drive efficient buildings. Urban planning guidelines were recommended to guide green urban regeneration and development, integrating multi-sectorial food governance mechanisms to be part of urban planning to promote urban agriculture. Sustainable urban food systems were recommended. To finance these policies, we need public and private sources, including creating urban value to enhance municipal revenue generation, public-private partnerships, developing functional capital markets, and improving access to green mortgages. On the second day, deliberations focused on transport and mobility. In this session, it emerged that as we project a sustainable mobility vision for 2050, the foundational strategic aspects are that Africa cannot build itself out of congestion. Hence, cities need to be designed around human mobility, not vehicle mobility. The other crucial strategic aspect was that Africa's low motorization rates were highlighted as an opportunity to implement low emissions transport policies and standards. These include physical measures to incentivize electric mobility, setting targets and plans to phase out internal combustion energy vehicles, and policy incentives that catalyze local innovations in clean transport. Financing the above needs multilateral funding institutions to onboard technical capacity, to evaluate technical projects, and explore setting up funds to support companies to enhance the scalability of innovative concepts. The third day focused on sustainable energy. During this session, it emerged that Africa's energy transition requires policy and non-policy enablers, including coherent and harmonized policies that allow energy investments to be tied directly to powering areas of the economy. Innovative financing was elucidated, focusing on local manufacture of renewable energy and energy-efficient technologies, and incentivizing Africa-led private sector investments. With all these, the common denominator was the need for a whole-of-society approach and tapping into the most significant non-state actors' constituency in the continent, African youth. They are the powerhouse of the continent, and the ingenuity need to be tapped. Honorable Minister, during these 3 days, we gathered as the global community with unity of purpose to showcase that we can seize transformational opportunities to lift millions from the bottom of the pyramid through climate action. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Munang. In fact, your highlights are really demonstrating that indeed there's a lot of solutions that were discussed in the Climate Week, all the way ranging from sustainable urban food systems, urban agriculture. These are my topics also that I like very much. Also transport and mobility, and I like the aspect of actually focusing on human mobility, not vehicle mobility, which are very important aspects. And this was very nice. And it seems like we talked a lot of solutions from the sessions. And thank you very much for these highlights. And let me also thank again our previous two speakers for the highlights. I feel like I've been able to go through the 3 tracks in a very short period of time. Thank you so much. Now we move to our speaker, to Mr. Hugh Davis, who is the Deputy Director, Adaptation Negotiations and Engagement from the United Kingdom, who will share with us messages from the UK initiative sessions, and specifically on the ones that I had mentioned that we run around adaptation, finance, carbon markets, on the transparency and reporting. Mr. Davis, you have the platform.
Many thanks, Motsumi, and good afternoon, colleagues. It's always intimidating to speak after many such speakers who all have the title of doctor. I'm afraid I'm only a Mr., but thank you for having me here today. On behalf of the UK incoming COP26 presidency, I'd like to extend my thanks and congratulations to all those involved in organising the wonderful range of events that have been put on this week. We thank the host government of Uganda, as well as the organising team of the UNFCCC, UNDP, UNEP, and the World Bank for their brilliant work. From my own experience of Monday's event on Indigenous people's leadership and yesterday's event on long-term strategies, I know that the conversations have been rich and wide-ranging, and these events are an important part of our collective work in the lead-up to COP26 in just over a month's time, as several of today's speakers have said. Above all, Africa Climate Week has enabled us to build new partnerships and strengthen existing ones. Only by working together can we truly help to deliver on the ambition of the Paris Agreement, whilst being conscious of the unique opportunities and challenges that this presents around the world and in this region. This kind of collaboration is fundamental to the success of all our collective work to keep the temperature goal of 1.5 degrees within reach and to adapt to existing and future impacts of climate change. And I'm looking forward to building on a lot of the conversations we've had beyond this climate week and in the weeks leading up to COP26. I would like to thank everybody, particularly for your engagement in the conversations we have convened this week as incoming presidency, from mobilising finance for climate action to discussing opportunities for research and innovation, as well as your engagement in the Africa session of the presidency's Global Goal on Adaptation workshop, convened a few weeks ago as part of our programme. And we've held a range of important discussions as part of the COP26 Catalyst for Climate Action, as Motsumi mentioned. These discussions on capacity building in areas ranging from environmental adaptation to establishing carbon markets provided opportunity for the international community to better understand regional challenges, sharing lessons learned so far and exploring future best practice for achieving climate goals, learning from successes as well as the challenges. Along with the COP President-designate Alok Sharma and all of the COP26 presidency team, I look forward to engaging further in discussions on the part that Africa has to play in the great challenge of our time. We will continue to work to ensure that perspectives from across the region are taken into account at COP26. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Davis, and really truly appreciated the contribution and of course the active engagement that has been also provided through the government of the United Kingdom on the events that were run alongside the sessions that were happening. I did attend some of those and I found them very useful and very informative. And people are quite engaging in very fruitful discussions. Thank you very much for that. And we now, I would now like to move to our speaker, our honorable speaker, the Honorable Minister Beatrice Anwa from the government of Uganda, to give us the closing remarks. Her Excellency has recorded her statement, and our technical team will play the statement. Thank you.
The Executive Secretary of the UNFCCC, Ms. Patricia Epsnasa, His Excellencies, distinguished delegates and friends, it gives me great pleasure to join you again at the wrap-up session of the 2021 Africa Climate Week. The objective of the African Climate Week, as was set out, was clear: to offer the much-needed platform to build momentum as we go into a conference of parties, COP26, and propel action at all levels. Excellencies, we have had captivating voices through the various panel discussions and the side events from effort each one of us is trying to put together at the country level, to the lack of finances, technical challenges that exist in the nationally determined contributions that should spark implementation of on-ground actions. It is a collective voice that needs to be listened to. Excellencies and distinguished delegates, it gives me assurance that all of us who have been part of this week's activities have one thing in common: the burning desire and urgency to address the climate crisis that we are faced with. However, questions still remain on how best this can be done in the spirit of fairness, balance, and equity. Excellencies, at the heart of our aspirations is effective climate action and response in whichever way possible each of us can do. All the voices that have come through from north of the Sahara to the Central and East Africa to further down south reaffirm that we are very much concerned about the negative impacts of climate change and the need to take bold action and decisions. Your Excellencies, of course we now know we have mitigation burden and a challenge to reduce emissions, an urgent necessity to address the runaway climate change. But we have also clearly had captivating interventions around the need to address the climatic losses and damages, the need for an all-inclusive response taking gender into account, the need for new skills, technology, and finance to build resilient societies. This raises concern. Excellencies, the risk and the undertakings clearly underline that climate change response is needed today, so much that they should form a basis for further engagement ahead of the Conference of Parties in Glasgow. In this regard, Excellencies, allow me to summarize 5 key issues that have resonated with many of the interventions that we have had, but in no particular order as such. 1, as we have all heard, advancing adaptation cannot be emphasized enough. Therefore, the political prioritization of adaptation and including launch of work to drive progress towards the global goal on adaptation is of paramount importance, and the mainstreaming effort of climate change across the sectors. The critical importance of meeting the $100 billion goal and the agreement on how the UNFCCC process will take forward work on climate finance, including finance for adaptation in developing country needs, aligning finance flow with Paris, as well as reviewing and giving guidance to multilateral climate funds. 3, the notion of how the new collective ratified finance goal post-2025 will be set prior to 2025. 4, addressing the gap that exists between the nationally determined contributions and the emissions reduction required by science to keep 1.5 degrees in reach, including a roadmap for strengthening 2030 nationally determined contribution as necessary ahead of and through the global stakeholder stock take in 2023. strengthen expectations of all parties, while at the same time strengthen the capacity of least developed countries, parties, that is the LDCs, to produce strategic pointing and implement actions that lead the way to net zero, regularly updated in light of the best available science. Your Excellencies, I invite you to further look at these elements in the context of justice and our vulnerability. This is the framework we want to build on, a framework already provided for in the Climate Convention and Paris Agreement. Excellencies, I close the 2021 Africa Climate Week with a much hope and optimism that the momentum generated in the past few days and the days to come will help us save tomorrow's climate today. Once again, on behalf of my government, I extend my appreciation to the UNFCCC Secretariat, the UNDP, the UN Environment Programme, together with the World Bank, African Development Bank, African Union Commission, and the COP26 presidency for the support extended to the government of Uganda to host the African Climate Week. I also want to thank excellencies and distinguished delegates to the exciting discussions, proposals, and propelling interventions we have shared on the Africa Climate Week platform. I'm confident the outcome of these sessions shall form a central part of our discussions ahead of COP, including the upcoming ministerial conference in October. I once more thank you. I say this for God and my country. Thank you.
And let us all thank Her Excellency for the inspirational messages that she's given to us, both on the actions that we need to do at the national level, recognizing the critical importance of the plans that we're doing, the NDCs, the ANAPs in driving implementation on the ground, but also as well touching on the critical and important topics that would be the center of discussions as we continue the intergovernmental negotiations under the UNFCCC. I thank you very much, Your Excellency, for the statement. I haven't actually found an innovative way of doing an applause on the screen. One day we will find it, but thank you very much, Your Excellency. This now brings us to the end of our program for the closing. And briefly, a few things that I used to inform everybody, every one of you. Indeed, we will all agree that the regional climate weeks provide opportunities for conveying at least some messages and the momentum happening in the region towards COP26 momentum. Indeed, the outcomes of the climate weeks themselves as a whole, the 3 series that have been run so far, will be communicated to COP26. And also, as one of my last words, one of the speakers at the beginning or at the opening said, in Africa, every week is a climate week because of the ongoing impacts and hazards of climate change that are being felt in the region. So I hope this is not the end of the conversation on climate issues. This is just one of those moments that we continue to reflect on what we are doing, and we will continue this conversation in the continent. And on behalf of the organizers as well, let me thank all of you for your active engagement and the participation. I would also like to thank our technical and logistical teams behind the scenes that have made this possible, our interpreters as well. Until we meet next again, goodbye, everyone.